Welcome to Wildlife Rehabilitation from Rescue to Release, a podcast dedicated to licensed wildlife rehabilitators and the veterinarians who support them. I'm your host, Gail Buell. Today, we're going to be talking to Dr. Julia Ponder. She's the Director Emeritus of the Raptor Center at the University of Minnesota College of Veterinary Medicine. That's where the Partners for Wildlife is based out of, and she was incredibly instrumental in helping us form Partners for Wildlife. But there was a lot of other things that she helped lead us and lead the Raptor Center, and continuing improvements and science and just best practices for lead and lead toxicosis, especially in bald eagles. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm very, very happy to be able to have her on the program as a guest. You may remember her a few episodes ago. We were talking to Wild Alert, and she was my co-host. And I asked her then if I could talk to her about something on the podcast, and there's many, many, many things that we were thinking about talking about where we landed on lead toxicosis, especially in bald eagles. So I hope you enjoy it. I get a lot of information out of it. In some ways, it's kind of a sad episodes, but in another way, we end on a very hopeful note. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. So, Julie, I'm so happy to have you on. The last time you were on, we were co-hosts talking to Wild Alert and that fascinating conversation. But I wanted to have you back as a guest because I wanted to talk about there's a whole bunch of things that we could talk about, but we settled on talking about lead toxicity and lead in the environment. But before we kind of get into that, I was wondering if you could give everybody your origin story.
Oh, how I got into this world. Well, it's great to be
Uh-huh.
talking to you again. Not only always fun to talk to you, but also what a great topic because it's so important. My origin story. Obviously, I trained as a veterinarian at Texas A&M many, many, many years ago.
Hmm.
Uh, did private practice for a number of years, a little over a decade, before moving to Minnesota. At which point I had to relicense and settle a family and started volunteering at the Raptor Center while I was there. And as I went along, I got to know more and more. Dr. Reddig and the others at the Raptor Center just gave me an education just because I was there and volunteering. And the rest is kind of history. Over the next few years, I became staff veterinarian and then eventually director of the Raptor Center. And so I did that until 2021. And then I recently retired from veterinary medicine just a couple years ago.
Wow. There's so much in there that we're not going to completely unpack today because the amount of work that you helped lead the Raptor Center, and certainly before you and after you, I mean, the Raptor Center is really about that science and the scientific study and all of those things for conservation, not just for raptors, but definitely for raptors. So might be other times I bring you on to talk about some of those other things, the
It's an
Galapagos
amazing
Islands.
place. Yep.
Amazing
Oh,
place. Absolutely amazing place.
amazing. Yep.
Um, so today we're going to talk about lead and lead toxicity. So with that, maybe talk a little bit about the background of how, the Raptor Center and why the Raptor Center interested in lead and things like that, and maybe some of that history. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Raptor Center has been interested in lead basically from the beginning.
Mhm.
And the reason being because Minnesota is a fabulous place for eagles. Early on, of course, when the Raptor Center was started, eagles were on the endangered species list, and there just weren't that many of them.
Mhm.
But the ones that came in consistently had exposure to lead and or lead toxicity. And so this critical issue in an endangered population um, was very important to Dr. Reddick. And so he started pursuing understanding both the issue of lead toxicity in eagles and in raptors in general, as well
Mhm.
as the causes and hopefully ultimately the solutions to this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So originally, they assumed that the lead toxicity was coming from eagles predating on waterfowl or scavenging on waterfowl that had been shot during hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 1991, the United States banned lead in waterfowl shot in order to protect specifically eagles, but wildlife, raptors, yeah, all animals that might eat on them because this is a secondary type of toxicosis or a secondary level. You know, the
Okay.
waterfowl get shot, and then it's the lead is in the food chain. The interesting thing was then in 1998, Dr. Reddig and colleagues published a paper showing that despite this ban on waterfowl ammunition with lead, where they had to use a steel shot, it didn't change anything. They were still getting
So we were still getting
eagles
raptors
with
or
lead
eagles in
toxicity.
particular with
Yeah,
like toxicity
yeah,
about
didn't
the same
change
levels. So it didn't
at the same
change
levels.
the percentage of eagles
Didn't
coming in
change
with it.
anything. Yep, the whole
Okay.
paper showed that the data that nothing had changed. The
Mm-hmm.
magnitude of the lead toxicity, the incidence of the lead toxicity, the numbers were the same.
Mm-hmm.
So then they started looking at what other sources might there be. And there could be a lot of sources of lead. We have removed a lot of it for human concerns from our products, our
Mm-hmm.
consumer products. But it became pretty obvious, and it'd be interesting to talk about why, but it became pretty obvious that lead toxicity in eagles was associated with hunting season, specifically
Mm-hmm.
deer hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because that was the time of year when the acutely toxic birds would come in, is
Mm-hmm.
they'd start coming in right after hunting season started.
And we're talking currently anyway, I mean, what they were looking at was Minnesota specifically, yes?
Yes, most of that is in Minnesota, but
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota and Wisconsin and the upper Midwest are major
Okay.
areas because A, they have the eagle population, and
Right.
B, hunting is a very large uh, outdoor sport here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because it might be,
Yeah.
I mean, lead is not just a Midwest phenomena.
No, not at all. It's
No,
international.
but
It's
it's
global.
international. It's
Yeah,
global. But in this
yeah,
context for this history, we're mostly looking at the kind of the
absolutely.
Midwest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's where the Raptor Center was, and that's where
Sure.
Dr. Reddig was seeing the eagles coming in and counting them. And when they come in, it's just so heart wrenching because it is such an awful presentation. I mean, they're in uh, such stress, and it's just such a horrible disease that he was really motivated to
Mm-hmm.
try and deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we're
So
going to talk
anyway,
about that later, about kind of
yeah,
like presentation and clinical signs and things like that. And yes, it's very sad. It's very sad.
yeah,
So, okay.
totally.
So back to the, kind of that historical thing. And we're talking specifically bald eagles. Folks that might be
Yeah.
listening out west, you have a lot of golden eagles, but in Minnesota and what we were looking at, we very seldom get golden eagles in wildlife rehab, rehabilitation, but it's bald eagles that we're
That's
talking
true,
about.
but a recent paper that looked at over 1,200 bald and golden eagles showed that golden eagles have the same level or very near the same level of exposure that bald eagles do. So while I can't
Well,
speak
huh.
to, I haven't treated that many golden eagles for lead exposure or lead toxicity or lead exposure, they too are getting exposed at really high levels.
Yeah. Okay, so it's waterfall shot versus
Yeah,
and it was deer hunting, not necessarily upland game hunting, right? It's deer
no,
hunting. So
no,
why? 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 I mean, because people do other
so
kinds of hunting.
most deer hunting in Minnesota is done with, although there are different zones, but most of it's done with high powered rifles.
Mm-hmm.
And when lead ammunition from high powered rifles hits a large animal, and
Mm-hmm.
especially if it hits bone,
Mm-hmm.
that lead, which is very, very soft, that lead bullet fragments. It just fragments into a dust storm. There's small particles, there's dust. We actually did some studies working with the DNR to see how far from the bullet track that lead spread through the animal's body. Really important is that if it was shot anywhere near, like a heart shot, anywhere near the gut, the gut pile that hunters would then field dress was just riddled with an explosion of lead fragments. And so in
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, hunting is November. The ground is often frozen. And for their own health, hunters are encouraged to field dress their deer. So that means that while they're in the field, they take out the gut pile so that all the bacteria and all the things in that gut pile don't continue to contaminate the animals, the meat
Mm-hmm.
after
Mm-hmm.
the animal dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then they either leave the gut pile often for other wild animals as a source of food because it's like a
Mm-hmm.
pulse food on the environment. Although
Mm-hmm.
we now know it's a very toxic source of food, we try and encourage them to bury their gut piles or to haul them out because we
Right.
do know that now that these gut piles are just riddled with lead
Mm-hmm.
if the animal was harvested with lead ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And so then
Mm-hmm.
we've also had field cameras. People have put trail cameras up on these gut piles,
Mm-hmm.
and we can watch how fast and how diverse the population of scavengers that come in to eat on that gut pile are. And it's just amazing. And the quick feeders are adult bald eagles, not even
Yeah.
just bald eagles, but adult bald eagles, those breeding age birds who
Mm-hmm.
are so critical to the population. And
Right.
they come in very quickly. As a matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, there's been reports that they actually even follow hunters once they hear the gunshots. They tune into that and
Mm-hmm.
they know that gunshot, food, I'm headed there.
Right. And yeah, it totally makes sense that they would,
Yeah.
because why
Yeah.
not? They're a learning animal and they're
They
out
are
there
a
for
learning
survival.
animal.
Yeah,
Right.
and I've watched some of those trail cams, and it's amazing
Yeah.
the number of animals, everything from mice on up to even golden eagles. And golden eagles in Minnesota pass
Yep.
through. They don't
Yep.
they don't breed here, but all of them and animals you wouldn't think would scavenge. We've always been told or grown up going, well, owls,
Right.
they don't scavenge. They only will take live. Oh no, barred owls. Here comes barred owls. Here comes all these
Yeah.
great horned owls. Here comes all these owls and so many other animals that can use that gut pile. And I always talk to people how important a food source those gut piles are, except, of course,
They're toxic.
they're toxic.
They're good food source if the animal is harvested with a copper bullet,
Yep,
which
copper,
is
or if
yeah.
someone, uses a bow and bow
Yeah.
hunting,
Yeah.
then that's a little
Absolutely.
bit different too, right?
Absolutely.
Very different. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll talk about kind of the solutions and
Yeah.
copper is definitely a very interesting one, and it's
Right.
great. It's a great solution. So, okay, so we talked a little bit, just very briefly,
Hmm.
about individual versus populations of animals, right? A lot
Right.
of people will say, well, and especially now, right? Bald eagles are off the endangered species list. That doesn't mean their populations are what they used to be way back when.
We don't know. I
And
mean,
we don't
they're
know.
definitely the population's definitely healthier,
Hmm.
and we don't know. We haven't done
We don't
any
know.
routine census since 2007.
Right. Right. So yeah, you're
So
right. We
we
don't
think
know.
we know, but we don't.
Uh-huh. Right.
Right.
And I'm gonna digress slightly, but it's not just lead toxicity that are affecting these animals, right?
No, not at
Our
all.
our
And
built environment is a very difficult one for them to negotiate. Um,
absolutely. Lack of habitat, emerging
mhm,
diseases, West Nile virus, avian influenza. There's a
mhm,
lot of things that are putting pressure. And, we'll probably talk more later, but that's the whole tipping point theory. We don't know what the tipping point is or when it's going to go when there's multiple things contributing to population pressures.
right.
And then we add in the fact that chronic lead poisoning, or low level lead poisoning, I should say, low level lead exposure is an immune suppressant. I mean, we know among the many organ systems that lead affects, it affects the immune system. And so
Hmm.
not only do we have multiple things putting pressure on the population, we have one of them being a immune suppressant that makes the animal more susceptible to those other
Other
issues.
things. Right.
And
Right.
so the whole population question, we always have people saying, yeah, just look, there's plenty of bald eagles out there now. And
Mm-hmm.
I acknowledge that the bald eagle population has done extraordinarily well in the past 20 years, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. But for instance, just a few years ago, we had almost a complete loss of breeding of the eagle population up at Voyager National Park.
Mm-hmm.
We had very few chicks or reproduction, just nests weren't active.
Right.
And we didn't know exactly why. But that's like a whole year lost population
Right.
recruitment.
And it's not like they breed like rabbits.
No, no,
So if they've got a good year, it's maybe three chicks, but more typically it's one to two.
right.
And the chances of those animals making it to breeding age, isn't
Exactly.
100%.
No, and that's
At
part of,
all.
we know that losing a small percentage of the adult breeding population, which, as we
Hmm.
said, are the ones that are the first ones at the gut piles,
Hmm.
it does not take much to turn a population because it does have so much um, time to raise chicks to
Yeah.
replace the population.
Hmm.
The other thing that's interesting, just a little side note, is the year after we had that loss of nesting up at Voyager, what we saw looking at feathers and just looking at ages is that the breeding population was much younger. We had
Ooh.
recruited younger birds that normally don't breed that at
Uh-huh.
that age, like at 4 years of age. But
Hmm.
because the adults, probably from high path avian influenza, but we don't know, because the adults had taken such a hit, there was
Hmm.
open territory, and the younger birds came in and were able to start breeding. So that's a good thing that Mother Nature does.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and it's also very telling.
Right. A lot of questions there still, right? One of the other things, kind of really getting back to the lead question is that kind of working toward banning it or keeping it at a
Yeah.
lower level or whatever. I mean, what do you say when I say it's the right thing to do?
It is. I mean, the simple answer is we talked about, loss of habitat and emerging diseases like West Nile virus and avian
Hmm.
influenza, as well as lead. These are all population pressures. Most of those we can't do anything about.
Right.
Lead is one that we can. And
Yeah.
so, if we can do something about it, why wouldn't we?
Hmm.
California, of course, has been the leader in this. In order to protect the California condor population,
Right.
they originally banned lead in condor areas and condor
Right.
territory. And of course, that was not
It wasn't
fully
sufficient.
effective because
Yeah.
they started ranging wider and eating
I
wider.
mean, they didn't tell the condors just stay in this
Yeah,
area,
they
just
didn't. They
stay here
didn't
and
at
just stay
all.
here.
Right. So after that, I think it was 2008 was when the partial ban went in place.
Hmm.
In 2019, they became the first state to implement a full statewide ban on lead ammunition for hunting.
Hmm.
Now there's still lead used for sport shooting and that stuff, but for hunting, which is where we get this food chain problem,
Hmm.
California has banned lead, which actually has helped the rest of us because it has made non-lead ammunition far more available and easy to identify. Used to be that there'd
Oh,
be
right.
all copper ammunition available in sporting goods stores, but it would never be labeled that way.
No, you'd have to, I remember going in just
Yeah,
to look, and you'd have to really sit there and study and read the
right,
fine print on all of the boxes
right.
to figure it out.
Right. And now California is just such a large population and a large demand
Hmm.
that the industry has had to respond. And again, that's been helpful to all of us.
Right,
In
right.
other places, it's just not the time or the place right now for a lead ammunition ban. It's not politically palatable.
Hmm.
And so we do a lot of education, hunter education, to try and explain to hunters why they're having an impact, what impact they're having, that their lead ammunition is killing twice. It's not only killing the deer that they're harvesting or shooting, but it's also, if that gut pile is left behind, a source of toxicants for other wildlife. And
Yeah,
so
we're gonna talk about public education because I think that
yeah,
as in a lot of things that's kind of the key
yeah,
onto
it
this whole
is.
thing.
And it's also
Hmm.
a bit daunting because, we have well over 100,000 deer harvested in Minnesota. Actually, it used to be
Every year.
close to a quarter million
Every year.
every
Uh-huh.
year, every
Uh-huh.
hunting season. And Wisconsin right next door is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a incredible number of gut piles on the landscape during that time. So
Right.
to solve this problem with education is it's important and it's daunting. I mean, that's a lot of gut piles, a lot of hunters that have to be reached
Right.
and
Um,
convinced.
oh, and convinced, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's so it's not, it sounds simple. Well, let's just ban it. It's not always as simple as that.
No, it's not.
It's not. And so it is, but it's a multi-pronged solution or set of solutions.
Yeah,
And one solution doesn't work in every single place. So it's kind of
absolutely. And
custom.
there's a lot of things that have been done, like ammunition trades. The A lot of the challenge, though, is just the concept that the whole topic is anti-hunting, and it's not.
It's
It's
not.
it's
I mean,
not at all.
how could it
It's
be?
ethical hunting. It's
It's
hunting for its
ethical.
conservationists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And a lot of hunters, that's their focus. We are
yeah,
about conservation, right? We're not just about going
absolutely.
out and hunting that deer. We're about the whole thing. And that's and I know a lot of hunters that are like, well, of course I'm going to switch. I'm
Yeah.
going to learn how to use copper or whatever.
Well,
And
that's one of the things we learned when we worked with other local Minnesota nonprofits and colleagues on trying to do a grassroots, we called it Hunter's Choice, but a grassroots effort to do hunter education. And
hmm
one of the things that was obvious very quickly is that we needed the people talking to hunters needed to be hunters, not conservationists like myself who honestly I've never hunted. I'm just not in my radar screen. But
right.
we had hunters who were passionate and knowledgeable, scientifically based, and understood the problem. And we found that that was one of the most effective ways to share the message
hmm
was, peer to peer.
Right. Right.
Also,
Hunters to
places
hunters.
like,
Yep.
yeah, yep. And in places like Arizona, they've done they've done ammunition swaps.
hmm
Bring in your lead, we'll give you copper. There's a lot of challenges to doing those, but they're very effective when done.
hmm I'm not exactly sure how effective it is, although I think it was pretty effective. In my family, there's a lot of deer hunters, and so if I drew their name for Christmas, I'd have to do a little investigation because I'm not a hunter either with, a gun,
Yeah.
but I'd have to do a little clandestine investigating what kind of gun, what kind of
Oh,
shot, what
what are
kind of
the,
whatever, and then that's what they'd get for Christmas. They'd get a box of shells,
that's a great
copper.
idea. That's a
And
great
I'm like,
idea.
it's going to last you a long time.
Yeah,
And here's maybe a little incentive to try it out. And then no pressure. I
absolutely.
would never really talk about
Right.
it. But they knew where I worked. They knew
Right.
what the challenge was. So it just, didn't preach, didn't anything, but Merry
No.
Christmas.
Exactly. And that's so great because yeah,
Mhm.
preaching doesn't do any good.
Mm-mm.
Um,
As much as you want to, because,
yeah.
you know, and we're going to get into the clinical signs and stuff in like a moment here, but, to see what we've seen, and not just the Raptor Center, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of folks around the country and around the world
Right.
know that this is such a huge challenge and are trying to work to solve it. So it's not just the Raptor
Right.
Center, but certainly the
Absolutely
Raptor
not.
Center led in a lot of different ways.
Good. Yeah. They led the research. They
Led the
led the
research.
a
Yep.
lot of ways. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so many people doing good research now, and that's great
Right.
because
Right.
science does give us power to make
Hmm.
good decisions.
Yeah.
Um, and this is one that we need to keep making, or we need to make good decisions with.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And like you mentioned earlier, and I really like that. This is a problem or a challenge that is solvable.
Right.
This is solvable.
Absolutely.
Some of these
Right.
other things are so complicated and so difficult, or,
Yeah.
um, that like avian influenza, I mean, it
Right.
affects a
Well, we
lot of
can't.
animals and everything. And There's a lot of things that
Right.
we can hopefully stop the spread in our own centers, but we really can't stop it
We
out in the
cannot
wild.
stop it on the on the landscape. No,
Nope,
I
we
mean, West
can't.
Nile virus came in, and we remember that how many
Oh, yes.
decades ago, and birds would just be falling out of the sky, and
Hmm.
though we can't do anything in that situation once those diseases have been introduced.
Right,
But
right,
we can stop lead toxicity from lead ammunition.
right. Right.
We
So
just
yeah,
haven't.
there's a lot of hope in that, and I think
Yeah.
that there's some things that have happened that I think are great
Yeah.
in that avenue. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk. We've been alluding to a lot about talking about the actual toxicity and things like that. We're going to talk
Hmm.
about it. We're going to talk about it. Well, let's talk about it. So, okay, we know how they get at least some of their lead. We're
Hmm.
going to talk specifically about eagles because, as we're also finding out, the Raptor Center, of course, just deals with hawks, eagles, owls, falcons, vultures, the
Right.
raptors. But in the last few years, a lot of centers, including the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Minnesota, have been testing a lot of mammals
Yeah. Yeah.
and land mammals, whether it's the animals that are physically close to the ground,
Yeah.
Virginia possums and squirrels and things like that. And they're also finding lead exposure with them, some to the
Absolutely.
point where they're treating them.
Yeah.
So that the lead is high. So we now know that it's not just birds, it affects.
No, and it's not just lead ammunition. I mean, we
Hmm.
with the Eagles, we are really focused because we know from the seasonal pattern
Right.
stuff, and from other studies that that's the source. That deer hunting source is the source for eagles. But there's lead sinkers and jigs from fishing that are the
Fishing.
source of
Hmm.
problems in waterfowl.
Hmm.
And we think some of those small mammals are getting it from the environment, from like mining and smelting, and just there's a lot of lead in our environment that's not normal. There is no amount of lead that is normal in a biological specimen or in an animal.
I was going to
No
ask you
lead,
that. What is
zero
the
lead is
normal?
there is none.
And it's
It's not
zero.
normal in the body.
Hmm.
And so there's a
It's
lot of
zero.
sources. Luckily, we have banned it because of its impacts on humans and children and
Hmm.
developing children's brains. So we have again banned it from consumer products, but we
Hmm.
still have a lot of lead in the environment. And we've
Yeah, we
often
really do.
talked about which lead it is and different risks with different. No, lead is lead.
That
Lead
is
is
loud.
lead. It impacts the biological system, the
Hmm.
body, in
Hmm.
so many ways, so many organs.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and it's just not normal. And
Right.
uh, I think most animals, especially in urban environments, probably now do have like a background lead level in their bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, not normal. Hmm.
No, no.
Okay.
It has
So,
impact, even at low doses.
yeah. Hmm. Um, okay, so back to we'll focus back in on raptors, especially eagles. So we know a little bit about how they get it into their bodies.
Hmm.
Eagles are scavengers as well. Bald eagles are scavengers as well as catching fish and injured waterfowl and things
Right.
like that. And they're getting lead exposure mostly from the gut piles in Minnesota from
Right.
deer, other places from maybe other ungulates that are being shot. And so, when does it start to really cause that damage?
I mean, we know in humans that lead starts causing damage as soon as it's at a detect. I mean, just as soon as it's in the body.
Okay.
So you can have chronic lead toxicity. You can have acute lead toxicity. Most of what we deal with eagles is acute
Hmm.
lead toxicity.
So,
Um,
explain what acute versus chronic means for
so
folks that might not
acute
know.
is, it's a higher dose ingested in a shorter period of time.
Hmm.
And so the blood levels, the body levels of lead are much higher. Chronic is just getting exposed to small amounts over time, generally have a much lower level in the blood, but the
Hmm.
body burden is higher because
Okay.
not all the lead is in the blood. The lead comes into the animal's digestive system when
Hmm.
they ingest it or when they eat
Hmm.
the lead. And one of the reasons it's such a problem in raptors is because carnivores have a very acidic stomach. And so the lead's in the stomach and the
Hmm.
acid starts breaking down the lead.
Mm-hmm.
and then it's absorbed into the bloodstream. But it doesn't
Okay.
stay in the bloodstream. It goes into the bone, it goes into the liver, it's spread throughout the body. So while
Mm-hmm.
we test and look at the blood levels, it's really the overall body levels that are significant to the animal.
Okay.
In acute lead toxicity, we have high blood levels, slightly lower body levels, but we have very profound changes to the neurological system, the kidneys, the vascular system, very quick changes and very deadly changes. With the chronic lead poisoning, it's those lower background levels impacts the same organ systems without a question. But one of the big differences is in an acute, we have
Mm-hmm.
a very sick bird, but their body condition's good. They look healthy from their body
Sure.
weight and from the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
In a chronic situation, we have a bird that's sickly.
Ah,
They're
okay.
just sickly. Their
Mm-hmm.
body weight's low. They're just not doing well. And
Mm-hmm.
then probably the third group is those that just have, that have lead exposure. And I mean, they have lead residues in their body, in their blood, and in
Mm-hmm.
their bones,
Right.
but they're not showing overt clinical signs. However, they
Okay.
are probably having subclinical impacts, again, to all those organ systems.
Right. Okay, so an eagle comes in. Let's say,
Mhm.
I'm just going to make this up. Let's say it was tagged by a car, hit by a car. Comes in, finder finds it, brings it into the Raptor Center. And so we know we're going to do an exam and things like that. What are the parts or pieces of parts of that exam that would help tell whether or not this animal has any kind of level of lead? And
Right.
are all raptors tested for lead when they come into the Raptor Center, or only a select
Yeah.
few, and kind of that?
Oh, so good question. Yes, they can come in, back to this whole what their presentation is. They may have obvious signs of lead toxicity, while there are other things
Mhm.
that can mimic the neurological signs of lead toxicity. If we get an adult eagle in with respiratory issues, neurological issues, seizures, um, in around hunting season, actually almost any time. But you know, we
Hmm.
we we know that bird's very likely to be lead toxicity. At the
Hmm.
Raptor Center, all eagles are tested for lead exposure.
Okay.
And that's part of, that's inherited from Dr. Redding's early work.
Hmm.
And it's both scientific collection of data as
Hmm.
well as testing the bird
Hmm.
as a diagnostic situation.
Hmm.
So sometimes they come in with clinical signs that are just pretty obvious to an experienced
Hmm.
clinician.
Hmm.
But again, all birds are tested. So then others come in, and it may be they come in with something else, and we don't know if there's a
Hmm.
correlation or causation. Is this just the bird comes in because it's hit by a car, it comes in for some other reason, and then we find out that it's got significant levels of lead in it?
Hmm.
Or is it causation? Did the bird get hit because it had lead
And it
exposure, lead
wasn't feeling very
toxicity?
good. Right.
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 We don't know that,
Hmm.
but there's that group. And then there's the group that just comes in with what we call, and I almost hate this, what we call background lead exposure, or normal lead levels. And again, there's no such thing as
Not
normal
normal.
lead levels.
Not normal.
But since, 70 some odd percent of the eagles
Hmm.
seen at the Raptor Center have exposure to lead or have lead residues in their body, they test
Hmm.
positive, and
Right.
that's crazy high level.
So we're testing by blood. Now,
Yeah.
when they come in, do you often, when we do radiographs or x-rays, do you
Yeah.
often see lead in the
Not
body?
as often. We
Hmm.
do we do radiographs of all birds, and one of the many things we're looking for is any signs of lead in the GI system or anywhere in the body. If we
Hmm.
see it, like, all too often, I hate to admit, but we often see lead in muscles because the animal was, somebody was taking pot shots at an eagle,
Hmm.
which is totally illegal. Um,
Hmm.
that lead can have some absorption, but because it's not in that acidic stomach, it's usually not a issue of any significant levels of lead.
Okay. Okay.
And there's even question whether it causes any raised lead
Right.
levels.
Right.
But if it's in the GI tract, in that acidic stomach,
Hmm.
it just takes, I mean, the amount of lead it takes is the size of a grain of rice. I mean,
Right.
it takes very little lead to kill a
Mm-hmm.
bald eagle.
Mm-hmm.
So any lead we see in the GI tract, A is diagnostic that there's lead exposure, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and B, we need to deal with it.
Right. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper into exactly how lead causes damage. We know it gets into the GI. We know acidic stomach makes
Mhm.
it break down and get right into the bloodstream. So what? What does it do that causes some of the challenges that you're talking about?
So when it gets into the bloodstream,
Mm-hmm.
it has impacts on probably the major one we see is the neurological system. So
Mm-hmm.
it just causes damage to the transmission of neurons. It causes brain edema. It causes irreversible changes to the brain. It can cause blindness. It can cause seizures. It can cause mental dullness, vocalization.
Mm-hmm.
It can also impact the kidneys. It can go into the kidneys and the liver, and it takes out those organs. Mostly, we think probably
Mm-hmm.
the first line of damage is through vascular damage. So all of those organs need
Okay.
blood supply in order to function well. And if you
Mm-hmm.
take away their blood supply due to vascular damage, you're going to start seeing signs of kidney failure, liver failure, GI tract problems. But again,
Mm-hmm.
oh, respiratory, the cardiovascular system is very impacted. So
Mm-hmm.
cardiovascular and neurological are the two systems that we really see in clinical signs as being
Right.
damaged.
So is the lead, once it's in the bloodstream, is it attaching to red blood cells? What is it doing?
It is attached to red blood cells
Mm-hmm.
when it's in the blood system, in the circulatory
Mm-hmm.
system.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as we mentioned, though, it frequently gets out of the circulatory system and into the bone and liver and into the body tissues pretty quickly. The circulatory system and the red blood cells just moving around the body.
I was going to say it's
Um,
transport. It's
yeah,
transport.
exactly. Transport.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And again, most of that damage is permanent. It's not
Yes, it's
reversible.
irreversible once
It's
yeah.
irreversible. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the difference between acute and chronic, and just to touch a little bit on clinical signs, but let's get a little bit more into clinical signs because if we see and it can look like other things too, right?
Right.
We know with
Right.
avian influenza, some of these neurologic signs can be kind of similar.
Yeah,
Um,
and West Nile virus and hit by car.
mhm,
If you get hit by a car and have head trauma or any type of head
right,
trauma, you see a
right.
lot of the same neurological, that weakness, the dullness, seizures. Yeah, just all
Yeah, seizures.
those neurological things can be from a lot of different causes. But
Yeah, and
again,
you
if we
mentioned that
see it,
vocalizations too is kind of, I've heard it and it's kind of different.
yeah,
I don't
it
know
is
how to
very
describe it, but it's
different.
very different.
Yeah, if you hear
Um,
a lead eagle vocalizing, first of all,
hmm
yeah, it's just a very different, it's very classic sound. I mean, you can hear it anywhere in the clinic. You're like, oh yeah, that's a lead eagle.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and it
that's
definitely
just
sounds like
heart-wrenching.
they're suffering. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, so now we have identified the bird as
Hmm.
having lead. I know we use, what is it called? The lead care test
Yeah, we use the Lead Care 2 kit,
kit. Okay.
which is actually developed for humans, but it's a
hmm
bedside diagnostic or screening system.
hmm
And so it basically tells us up to a certain point if the animal, or if there's lead in the blood. Again, we're
hmm
testing the blood, which is a fair but not good representation of what's in the body.
Right.
But if we find it in the blood, we know the animal's been exposed, and that's the easiest thing to test. So we
Right.
take a small blood sample, and with
hmm
Lead Care 2 kit, can get a result in just a couple minutes
hmm
right there.
hmm
Now, one of the interesting things is you'll see in a lot of the literature that 65 micrograms is per deciliter is a level that is often cited as a
Like
threshold
a
for
threshold. So if it's
yeah,
above that, that's really high,
right,
and below that,
right.
okay.
But
Okay.
part of the reason that's the threshold is because that lead care 2 kit that many of us use That's the top of it. It it
Oh,
it
that's so
gives us a
interesting.
number up to 65
Huh.
micro, micrograms per deciliter, and
Uh-huh.
then above that it just says high.
It just
Now
is
we
high.
can go to a diagnostic lab and get a an accurate test at our level of lead at any level.
Mm-hmm.
That's expense. A lot of nonprofits do not have the resources to do that kind of testing on
Mm-hmm.
every eagle. And it also
Mm-hmm.
takes time. Again, the Lead
Mm-hmm.
Care 2 kit, we get a result in a couple minutes,
Mm-hmm.
whereas to send it to a lab and get a more accurate or a more detailed level,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that takes time and money.
Right. Right. Okay. I do want to do a little aside because I'm thinking that a lot of folks listening might know a little bit about the Raptor Center, which would be amazing because it is world renowned. I'm, bragging maybe a little, but
Right.
not really, not really. Um, and very lucky to be able to work there and see all this amazing work that's being done there. But I want to let people know why the Raptor Center, why a lot of this came out of the Raptor Center and a lot of the literature and a lot of the science and everything is couple pronged. And I want you to jump in here anytime if for more detail. But we are part of the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Minnesota. So when you're at a place like that, we are about research. And the whole university is about research and getting it right. And being part of the College of Veterinary Medicine, that even bumps it up even a level higher, I believe. So everybody at the Raptor Center is not just about taking care of these individual animals and trying to get them back out into the wild. That's the purpose of wildlife rehabilitation. But at the same time, what can we learn? What can we
Right.
further our treatment, make it better, make it faster, make it whatever, so that we have animals that can get out there faster and get back to what they
Right.
were supposed to be doing. So
We're
that's
about
one of the
science and
things.
research. Yeah.
Science and
Science and research
research.
and
Hmm.
expanding the knowledge base,
And expanding the
expanding what
knowledge.
we know. Yeah.
Yep, and we've shared it via papers, and we certainly have done it
Mhm.
when people have called and asked, "Hey, what is your lead protocol?" or whatever it is, and we teach, and now we have Raptor Academy, those kinds of things. The other thing I want people to know is the Raptor Center. It's not really an accident that the Raptor Center has been able to do a lot of that, not just because of where we are with the college and the University of Minnesota, but because we're on the Mississippi Flyway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that means that we are seeing a lot of raptors, and where a lot of folks around the country might see a lot of raptors, we see a concentration of raptors.
Yeah.
And Minnesota has 15,000 plus lakes, and that is a critical piece of habitat that bald eagles need. And so we have a lot of bald eagles. Again, Wisconsin does too.
Yeah.
And we're only beat out by Alaska. Florida's up there too, but that's for a different
Right.
conversation. Anyway, um, so we can see upwards around 200 bald eagles a year. And so that number is not insignificant.
No,
Uh,
we have.
yeah,
I would add one more thing that
yep,
absolutely that Mississippi Flyway, that eagle population is a huge piece of the Raptor Center's history
mm-hmm,
and its location. And I got to take another non-biological contribution because this is so important to the Raptor Center, and that is Minnesota is such the people of Minnesota are very philanthropically minded and
yep,
are generous in supporting the work that's done. Because, of course, even though the Raptor Center is part of the university, it is totally funded by nonprofit. I mean, it's funded on its own, and so its
right,
nonprofit
right,
donations are a huge part of,
mm-hmm.
or not, donations to a nonprofit are a huge part of how it does its work, and that Minnesota was a great place to do that when it started.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because, as we've talked about with rehabilitation, it takes a village, and
Yeah,
Minnesota is, and I've lived here all my life. You came from Texas, but I've lived here all my life, and one of the things I really appreciate about this state is that it seems that most of us really value the wild spaces and park spaces and
right.
space for wildlife. Not perfect by any stretch, but we still do value that. and value clean
Right.
water and value those kinds of things. And you're right. I think that shows up in we're going to support these organizations that are helping our wild neighbors.
Right.
So I think that
And it's
whole
also what
combination.
gives us a little bit of hope, even though I said the education, um, a path to solving
Hmm.
this problem is daunting to fully
Hmm.
solve it.
Hmm.
The fact is most of our population, our hunters, are conservation minded. And when
Hmm.
they really understand the issue, and they really understand the problem, um, and have all their questions answered,
Hmm.
you know, they make good decisions.
Right, right. And now, like you mentioned earlier, too, there are options
Yeah.
where there wasn't really
Yeah,
before.
exactly.
So, so yes, so we're in a good place. We get a lot of eagles. The Raptor Center
Right.
has also been around for 50 years, more than 50 years now. So
Amazing.
all of that uh,
Right.
in combination helps lend to the science and kind of what we're doing and a lot of other folks are doing, but especially the Raptor Center doing about lead and lead toxicity. So thanks for that little aside, because I was
Yeah.
thinking, maybe people don't realize how many raptors we see. Last
Yeah.
year, raptors in general, we saw over 1,200. So
Yeah.
not just eagles, all the raptors that we see that either pass through or live in Minnesota. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
animals. And we've helped a lot of them, but as well helping future raptors that are injured or need our assistance because of the ones we're seeing, which
Right.
just I just love that. I just love that about the Raptor Center. Thank you to Dr. Julia Ponder. Really appreciate her expertise. Wildlife Rehabilitation from Rescue to Release is a production of Partners for Wildlife, working hand in hand with wildlife rehabilitators and the veterinarians to support them to improve the welfare of orphaned, ill, and injured wildlife. Our executive producer is me, Gail Buell. I'm the Partnership Coordinator for Partners for Wildlife with the Raptor Center at the University of Minnesota College of Veterinary Medicine. Our producer is Reese Rosado.